What is the most pathetic way someone has tried to assert dominance over you? I always feel like the guys who refuse to make room for you when walking by in the other direction are trying to assert their dominance and make themselves feel like hot crap. I never understood why people do that. I figured out the best way to handle this when I was in college and the sidewalks were narrow. Just stop walking and stand still. Now they're the only ones walking and have to go out of their way to avoid you instead of them expecting you to move. He tried to drink water faster than me. No one drinks water faster than me. No one drinks a tall glass of water like Gaston. Worked as a lifeguard at a summer camp years ago. During safety training, we had to do a missing persons search, which required all available staff to join hands and walk from the beach to the water as far as we could while feeling with our feet for the missing swimmer. During training, there was a sandbag we had to find. The guy next to me kept insisting on holding mine in a certain way because I will take the upper hand in this situation, said at me while staring down. Whatever, dude, we're theoretically looking for a drowned child right now. Earlier this year, my boss asked me to do something and then leaned over me and said, "You are going to do it." He was like literally leaning over me because he was 6'8". Dude acted like a cliché high school bully from an 80s movie and was like 40 years old, so I assume he was at some point. Anyways, he quit. I used to tend bar in Milwaukee, and there's nothing that triggers bros more than seeing someone drinking something that they personally don't like. I can't tell you how many arguments began with some guy, always unsolicited or unprovoked, mind you, feeling compelled to judge and educate other guys about what they're drinking or not drinking. You drink that? And it goes downhill from there. Nobody cares. Drink what you like and shut up. I was at a bar in Stevens Point and the barman whips out a skin flick mag asking if I want to read it. No thanks. Why not? Are you gay? He looked as if I'd offended his ancestors by not wanting to read his adult magazine in the middle of a bar. Yeah, I used to know cliché blokey wannabes growing up who had deluded themselves into thinking that this was a totally normal thing to do. Keep it private, folks. No friendship is enhanced by looking at naughty bits together. Literally last weekend, some really drunk dude who I've never met once or interacted with tried to fight me to impress the girls he was with. It was completely ridiculous, and his way of trying to initiate it was just to repeatedly body check me on the dance floor, which I ignored because I thought he was just being drunk and dumb. Turns out one of his friends had to stop him from blindsiding me with a sucker punch to the face, assuming he was able to aim that well. Some people do not mix well with alcohol, apparently. My husband is a tall dude and told me that while at university, he constantly had guys trying to pick fights with him at the bar. It was like they found the biggest guy there was and was like, "Yep, I'm gonna beat him up." My husband is the biggest softy though, so he would just kind of laugh and brush them off. I've worked at bars my whole life and this is very common. If you're tall, you're a target. It makes no sense and has nothing to do with the personality of the tall guy. It's just what it is. It's even worse for bouncers. The mentality, which is probably subconscious, is that if you're an aggressive smaller guy and you fight a bigger guy, it's a win-win. Either you lost because he's bigger, or you won and took down the bigger guy. It's funny because over the years, I've never had a problem with big guys. The 6'5" dudes are fine. It's always the short dudes you have to kick out. People are weird. A former co-worker, he would just stand in the way and refuse to move. Even if he wasn't in the way, he would purposefully get in the way. I work in a narrow kitchen, so you can imagine how annoying that could be. At one particular moment, I was carrying a bulky 20-pound box, and he decided to do that. I pretended not to see him and barreled into him. He fell over and got incredibly mad at me. Started talking about how I have no muscle. It was actually pretty funny. It was a display of the most fragile masculinity I have ever seen. Similar experience. I had a regular keg and one of those skinny kegs on my shoulders. I was hustling to get through the narrow kitchen to replace the blown kegs for the bartender. Idiot guy who did the block game did the same to me and I definitely barreled into him. He proceeded to jump up and try to trip me in the bar, to which I dropped the skinny keg on his foot. Like, you see someone with heavy crap, don't be a butthole. Not me, but my wife. We were living in an apartment complex and my wife had just parked her car, was carrying groceries and my 2-year-old inside, and this guy stopped her and said, "That's my spot. You need to move your car now." We don't have assigned spaces, but my wife was caught like a deer in headlights and put all the groceries and my daughter back in the car and moved it, just so he could park his 10-year-old Cadillac CTS in his favorite spot. I always got home from work before this guy, however. I never directly confronted him. But from then on, that parking spot became my spot, and I parked there every single day for the next 2 years. I saw him out and about a few times, but thankfully being 6'1" and overweight and bearded, most people chose not to fight with me, even though I've never been in a fight and would be helpless in a confrontational situation. In junior high, I remember this one bully that would get on his tiptoes and puff out his chest like a gorilla, and get all in your face whenever he felt threatened. It was such a funny stereotype maneuver. He did that once to one of my friends as he was trying to start a fight. He'd spread his arms wide and push out his chest while aggressively asking, "You wanna go? Huh? You wanna go?" Without a word, my friend grabbed his collar and pulled him into a headbutt, knocking him to the ground, delirious in one hit. My friend, in fact, wanted to go. Plot twist, the guy was asking your friend to go to the prom with him. Double plot twist, the headbutt was actually a kiss and the bully swooned. Sounds like my high school. A friend of mine was this short, about 5'6" at the time, built like a little tank wrestler who was a huge nerd. D&D, magic, you name it, he loved it. There was a giant football player, 6'4", who was a notorious jackass. Football player starts harassing my friend, calling him the usual, "I'm a big tough man," insults. My friend asks him to stop. The football player puffs up his chest and says, "You wanna frickin' go, little man?" My friend turns slightly and drives his elbow right into the guy's solar plexus. It's pretty hard to look tough when you're gasping for air like a fish out of water. Forgot to mention my friend had been talking about a new D&D campaign he was working on when this happened. One time at a house party, a few of us were talking to some girls, and one of the guys randomly started talking about how he does MMA. Then another guy joined in, and those two started wrestling in front of the girls. I don't think their shirts needed to come off, but what the frick do I know? Taking off your shirt is proper MMA procedure and culture. Leaving them on could have dishonored their whole family. This happened over D&D when my friend, who owns a store, let these guys we didn't know that well join our campaign. I don't know why I, out of the table, got singled out, but a girl walks in and this guy complained that I didn't order pizza for him. Said, "How about you go frick yourself," when I asked him if he wanted some of mine. Walked over behind me and, playfully, put his arms around my neck. I told him I'd punch him in the face if he did it one more time because I don't know who the frick he is. It absolutely ruined my day. By flicking my boy bosoms. I was standing in the breezeway outside a friend's apartment while in college, and a guy coming down the stairs from an upper floor kinda tripped near the bottom of the stairs and stumbled into me. It was clear that he was super drunk and immediately got aggressive. He was so worked up about being tougher than me that for some reason he started doing push-ups at me while me and my friends just laughed. Fortunately, his friends came and apologized and took him back up the stairs, but it was definitely the most bizarre assertion of dominance I've ever encountered. His lizard hindbrain is apparently of the Texas spiny lizard variety. They do push-ups at each other to defend their territories, which are frequently suburban driveways. I don't know about no lizards, but I can confirm for you all that a drunk push-up contest to assert dominance is pretty Texan. I don't know if push-upping spiny lizards are actually a thing or not, and you know what? I don't care to Google it, because finding out that they didn't exist would only be disappointing to me now. Generally, guys purposely bumping into you when you walk past them, especially if they're with friends. My high school was overcrowded, so hallways were always packed, but I always did my best to move for people or turn myself so people could get through. But I realized I was always the one moving for other people, so one day I decided not to move for people, and most of the guys I encountered in the hall would just run into me because they refused to move. Like, just move. My daily commute on the subway was like this, people standing directly in front of the doors and even trying to enter as if you were just a spectre image they can walk through. I used to move out of their way or excuse myself. Now I just do the same and walk through them if they refuse to move. I simply expect this to be an unfortunate normal part of my life going forward, lest I be the one knocked over or missing the opportunity to disembark again. I work in a grocery store and sometimes I help unload the delivery trucks when our delivery comes in on what we call cages, like a 6-foot cage on wheels, and obviously one that's full of toilet paper will be really light, and one filled with 2-liter bottles of juice are the heavy ones. The lift that lowers them from the truck has that patterned metal floor, and you have to pull the heavy ones hard just to get them off. Now, I'm 5'8" and don't have a lot of weight on me, but I can pull these cages off just fine. But there's a guy who's like 6'2" and is always trying to show how strong he is. So whenever I'm helping and he's there, he always insists that he gets the heavy cages and I get the little guy cages. Everyone agrees he needs to grow up. Guys like that are great though, because you can just chill and let them do all the annoying work if they feel the need to prove something. This is brilliant. Subtly threaten their masculinity and watch them do all the hard work. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A friend tried to make himself look good in front of his crush by literally putting me in a random chokehold for a laugh. Turns out it was because I was talking to her. I had a girlfriend at the time, we were just talking. It wasn't a chokehold though, it was basically just a headlock, so I decided to correct him. I was fairly oblivious and didn't realize this was a failed alpha move. Creeped the crap out of his crush that he would do that out of nowhere, and she stopped talking to him. Apparently she quite liked him up until that point, so he kinda shot himself in the foot. Because romantic interests respond well to displays of unprovoked aggression and violence, right? Right? I just love a man who can fly off the handle at any moment. Was out having a drink, started chatting to the guy next to me when I learned that he too is a musician. He then tells me, "You're not a musician. I find it offensive when people tell me they're a musician when they haven't put in the time and dedication that I have." Okay, dude, come down off your ego trip. Jesus Christ. What the frick? How the frick would he know how much time and dedication you put into it? Heck, for all you know, he hasn't put in any either. Frick, he isn't even devoted enough to music to prefer it to feeding his ego. Anyway, here's Wonderwall. I had someone stand on their tippy toes to seem taller when we were talking. Talked about how the MBA program at his alma mater was superior to where I was getting my MBA. For clarification, he doesn't have and isn't working on an MBA, but wanted to be sure I knew he was better because he went to a school with a perceived better program. So when I was in the 8th grade, there was this one kid who hated me for no reason. I was really big for my age, and there was no way this 5'1" guy was going to fight me, so he did something so cringy I have no idea what he was going for. I was sitting at lunch with my friends, and this kid walks up to us and spits in my glass of milk and says in a very commanding tone, "Drink." I just stood up and the kid bolted. Got a good laugh out of it with my friend though. To be clear, I did not drink the milk. You just reminded me of the one time in high school a freshman sitting across from me, I was a senior, decided that bothering me was his ticket to alpha status or something. One day at lunch, he threw a curly fry into my drink and asked me what I was going to do about it. He had just gotten back from the snack bar with a couple of cookies and an unopened bottle of soda, so I just reached over and took those. I didn't really like the soda, and I only wanted one cookie, so I doled the rest out to my friends. He just laughed nervously. Once I realized he wasn't going to do anything about it, I thanked him for the cookie. Freshman being a butthole, you gonna do something about it? Senior does something about it. Freshman surprised Pikachu JPEG. When asked about what his hobbies are, he responded with, "Hobbies are for children and single women. I work." You want to know how cool I am? You want to know how tough I am? I'm so tough that I have no life, interests, or friends. Oh, fun. Sounds like the kind of guy who'll either work himself to death or suffer a complete mental breakdown 1 week into retirement. The type of person who after he retires will have no idea how to occupy himself, so he'll spend his time calling the police over minor noise complaints and hassling his neighbors over where his exact property line is. We had a candidate come into the interview and legit say that he wanted to sit behind the desk because he was going to be the one asking the questions to decide if he wanted to work with us. I think he'd gotten some bad advice about having confidence. I laughed, but our HR manager flipped out. The only time I've ever actually seen her call security. What was the guy's reaction once he realized it was going so badly? Oh, he commented, "Well, this is obviously a hostile work environment, blah blah blah." Was on a 4-hour flight, in a 2-person row. The guy demanded to have full access to the middle armrest, would push my arm off it if I ever got near it. Oh man, I was in the middle of a 3-seat row. The guy on my left was some kind of exec, checking his work email on his laptop. Anyway, after the first hour of armrest jockeying, I just asked him, "Are we doing this the entire flight?" He pretended to not speak English. The mother fricker was reading his emails in English and pulled the no hables card on me. He finally conceded the armrest after that. Yeah, I think it's common consensus that the person in the middle seat gets both their armrests, isn't it? It's one of those unspoken rules that you would feel like a jackass for trying to enforce, though. I was walking to my car after school and this guy was getting in his car and just yells at me, "You ugly as frick, bro." I flipped him off without even looking at him and he called me the B word and drove off. How petty do you have to be to tell someone minding their own business that they're ugly? People that shout out of cars are cowards. Excuse me, they prefer the term scrub. I was leaving a gas station once with a 6-pack of some craft beer to go watch a game at my friend's house, and a group of college kids were driving out of the parking lot, and one yelled out the window, "6-packs are for slang word for female anatomy." I guess the amount of beer I was planning on drinking that night wasn't adequate to his standards. Had a dude get mad at me for talking to his girl all the time. I was her Eon Shooter. I once tutored this truly clueless girl at general chemistry. She wanted to be a nurse and couldn't get past the first class, but whatever, I'll tutor you. She was, however, very pretty. Second tutoring session, she shows up with her boyfriend. Dude doesn't study, doesn't say a damn word the whole 2-hour session, just stares at me and her going over the basics of chemistry. Next class, same thing. Next class, I bring my girlfriend to have a stare-off with him. He got the message and left us alone. If you can't trust your partner to spend 2 hours in a crowded university library without screwing someone else, you probably shouldn't be with that person. I had a guy message me threats on Facebook because I'd been talking to his girlfriend. The thing is, his girlfriend is my cousin and I don't live in Alabama. I guess she couldn't speak to anyone at all. A friend of mine had a girl send her a ton of nasty texts one day, totally out of the blue. Stay away from him, he loves me, you're probably an ugly B-word, etc. My friend is the guy's aunt. Was at a party and was given the task of handing out beers to people. This guy flipped his crap, saying he only drank real beer. Dude, it was cold and free. That's the best beer there is. A guy was mad at me while sitting at a light and was revving his engine. It sounded like he'd held it at the red line, and there was a big crack sound and smoke started pouring out the front of his car. The dummy had blown his engine. That's when you throw your head back and laugh as you slowly accelerate forward in your 2013 Dodge Dart. My neighbor in front of my house had a boyfriend that would literally rip his shirt off and come outside every single time I was in my front yard. It could be 7 a.m. or midnight, but it wouldn't matter to him. I could be walking to my car and here comes Mr. Globo Jim flexing all around his yard. He would immediately go back inside when I went back inside. This went on for almost half a year until one day I saw him hop into his mega-lifted truck and drive away never to be seen again. He did have some pretty sweet pecs though. I would have spent a day fricking with him. Go outside a while and wait for him to come out, then just go back in until he leaves, then do it again. Make a buff-looking scarecrow and leave it in your front yard. Or like a cardboard cutout of Ronnie Coleman. One night in college, me and my buddies were walking down the street at about 11:30 p.m. We were near a major university on a street that was almost entirely college kids renting. It was Friday night, warm, so lots of people were out drinking on patios, talking, playing drinking games, etc. Generally pretty chill. We're done pre-gaming at home and headed to a bar or something, I don't remember. Anyway, we're walking down the road and across the street there's some people on a patio. They yell something at us, we weren't really listening but the tone seemed friendly at least. Woo, yeah, college bro, am I right? Generally, kind of thing. So I yell back, yeah man, cool beans, and return to my conversation. Apparently this guy does not like beans, regardless of temperature, because the next thing I hear is, did you just frickin' say cool beans? And I see this perfect Skylar pop-collar college bro storming off his porch to come across the street at us, looking like I just peed in his Bud Light. I can only respond with a confused, yeah? My group stops. This dude is crossing the street at us looking like he wants to fight. Him? Say it again, bro. What did you just say? Some girl behind him. Just let it go, Blake, or Skylar or Chad, whatever he was called. They didn't mean it. Me. What? Really? My friend? What the frick? I said cool beans. Get the frick out of here, dude, before I kick your butt. Okay, later, bro. And we walked off the street as he started angrily flexing in the middle of the street while his girlfriend is tugging his arm, trying to get him back into the house. We made it to the end of the block, about 3 more houses probably, before my entire group just broke down laughing at the absurdity of it. I really don't understand it. Was it supposed to be a prank? Was he just a drunk dude looking for a fight? Did he think I was intimidated? I'm not sure. Either way, cool beans and did you just frickin' say cool beans? Are still a standard farewell among that group of friends. His whole family was killed in a freak chilled beans accident. His girl saying he didn't mean it is the most intriguing part of the story. Not me, but my dad. My dad has season tickets for the AHL hockey team in town. One day he was late for a game and arrived to see a teen in his seat with his girlfriend. My dad kindly asked him to move, explaining that those were his seats. The teen responded with a quick, "No, it's not." My dad then showed him his season ticket and pointed out on the kids' tickets that their actual seats were a few rows up. The kid got up and tried to square up to my dad. My father was just like, "Really, dude?" and ignored them. The girlfriend began screaming at my dad for being a butthole. Long story short, Dad kindly asked a kid to get out of his seat and the kid tried to intimidate my dad for this. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.